A lot of times in videos, you'll hear me mention that succulents like bright shade. So what exactly is bright shade? What does that look like and why is it good for succulents? That is what I'm going to show you in this video. I live in the Phoenix area of Arizona and it gets crazy hot here. And as you can see behind me, most of my side yard where I'm growing succulents, it's basically all concrete, cement, rock. So it gets really hot and it also gets direct sun for almost the entire summer. So I have found that creating this bright shade that I'm about to show you is one of the most important things for keeping my succulents happy in the heat. So they do still get really hot, but when they are shaded and out of that direct sunlight, then the heat isn't quite as bad. So behind me here, you can see I have a bunch of succulents. This is an area that stays pretty well shaded for most of the day. Now, right now, I would say it's somewhere in between bright shade and dark shade. So dark shade would be somewhere that is like under a tree where it's really, really dark. So it's somewhere that's pretty far away from the light. Now, the difference between bright shade and just regular shade or dark shade is the distance of your plants in that shade from the edge of the light. So let me show you what I mean by that. So right now you can see the edge of the light is right here, right along actually the end of our patio where it switches over to the rock. And we're growing weeds and other plants for our tortoise to eat, so that's why it's going to look a little messy here. But then you can see as I come back here to where these succulents are, they're pretty far away from the edge of that light. So I would say they're about 5 to maybe 6 or 7 feet away from the light. So this is still a fairly bright area, but it is darker than the next spot that I'm going to show you. So in the case of these plants, during the summer, this will actually get closer and closer to the shade because this line that you can see here, this will actually migrate as the sun gets higher in the sky throughout the summer. This line will shift to where it's almost over here, and then in that case these succulents will be more in what I would consider to be bright shade. All right, this might not be the most attractive view at the moment, but like I said, we basically live in like a brick oven. We're surrounded by rock. So my husband built this pergola and we ended up hanging some shade cloth both on the top and on the sides because this gets direct sun throughout the full summer. You can see right here is that line from the shade. So this gets blazing hot and it's full sun, full heat all summer long. So we put the pergola up and put the shade cloth on it so that we could create more of that bright shade. And this time of day, you can see we get some speckled light in here from where the shade cloth isn't quite covering. And I don't know if you can tell a whole lot from the video, but it is much brighter in here than over in the corner that I was just showing you. And the reason for that is the shade cloth that we are using is 50% blockage. So it's not 100%. It's not creating true shade or full shade. It's only 50%. And I wanted to do that because I did still want these succulents to get a good amount of sunlight because they are full sun succulents. Almost everything in here has been in this planter for at least 2 or 3 summers, and they have been in a variety of different types of shade. But this setup with the shade cloth has worked the best. It's allowed them to still stay pretty compact and colorful. You know, they're not stretching out, but it's also not burning them from the intense heat. So we will have to kind of watch for areas like this where there is direct sun coming through and make sure that's not happening in the heat of the day, because that will be much more likely to burn them. So the biggest test for us this summer is going to be this Kalanchoe lucei, the flapjacks Kalanchoe, and then we also have some of the traditional ice plant here, and you actually just missed the blooms. It looked gorgeous a couple days ago. And then I bought 2 arrangements from Home Depot. You can see this one's looking a little stretched out and spindly here. It was much tighter and more compact. I actually had it over in that first area that I showed you, and it just wasn't getting enough light. So you can see the new growth of these Graptosedum California Sunsets is green instead of the red color. And that's because it wasn't getting enough sun. So I'm curious to see how it changes over the next few weeks as it's in this area under the shade cloth that is getting more of that bright shade as opposed to a darker shade. And then the other arrangement that I got from Home Depot to test out. So my goal is just to leave these exactly how they were planted and see how they will survive the summer heat. Now that I have a couple years experience in the heat under my belt, I'm hoping I will be able to help them stay happy. But again, you can see here, this ghost plant is super, super stretched out now. It was much more tight and compact. And then even these sedums you can see are stretching out a little bit. So again, they were over in that area that was more of a full shade, and now they're in a bright shade or half shade area. And I'm hoping that they will start to color up again and start growing more compact with that new growth. One of the most important things to consider when you are growing succulents outside is what your lighting setup looks like. So as I showed you, there are 2 different areas in my yard where we have succulents growing, and the shade amount is very different. So one is much brighter than the other. But it's also important to know that full sun is a really ambiguous term. So full sun in somewhere that never gets above 80 degrees is going to be very different than somewhere like here in the Phoenix area where we get over 110 degrees for multiple days in a row throughout the summer. So even though technically these succulents I have out there are full sun, they will not tolerate full sun, full heat all day long in the Arizona heat. So be sure to keep that in mind and pay attention to where the light is in your yard and how it changes throughout the year. One thing that's really been interesting about our side yard is that in the winter, because of the sun being lower in the sky, we actually don't get any direct sun on the back patio. So it's really shaded all throughout the winter. And then unfortunately, because the sun gets higher in the summer, it's full sun all summer long. So if we could switch it, that would be awesome, but we can't. So that is why we're working with the pergola and the shade cloth to help keep things more cool and out of the direct sun. So take a look around where you're growing succulents or where you want to be growing succulents outside and see what the light situation is like. Do you have full sun in the morning, but then it starts getting shady by around noon? Or is it full sun all day or full sun in the heat of the afternoon? Ideally with succulents, you'll have them in sun in the morning hours when it is cooler and then shaded in the afternoon. So take a look, see what you've got going on. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, share it with all of your succulent loving friends, and I will see you next time.